right, so the first step in creating our card is we need to cut the pieces for it. So I'm not going to do any of the die cuts in this video. What I'm going to cut is the base of the card and the different layers to it. So this particular version of this card has a light blue base, navy blue for the first mat, and then a print for the second mat. For the most part, this one's a little bit different in here, and each version of the card has different layers. For instance, this one here, I did navy for the base, and then there's a combination of silver, cardstock, and white that I've distressed the background for the first layer. And then the only ones I put second layers on is this center part here, and no, that's a distressed one. So each different version of the card can have different layers to it. So I'm just going to show you how to cut the pieces for this one. With the supply list, each of the different layers, what I've cut for each one will be separated just to make it a little bit more clear. But this one has the clearest layers for sizes, and it's mostly the sizes. Again, they will all be written on the supply list, so you don't need to remember the sizes that I'm telling you, but this is what I'm going to show you how to cut. So the very first layer is the base, and the base of the card is 6 by 12. The finished size of the card is going to be, once it's all folded, is going to be 4 by 6. So the second, we're going to do the navy first. The second layer, I tend to start at the base and go in, and I tend to do the first layer first before I do the second one. So there's a lot of measurements in 8ths for this one, and I know from teaching classes, I'm in Canada, that a lot of people here have a bit of an issue cutting 8ths because we're used to the metric system. So this is already 3 7/8 wide. I need to cut one square that is 3 7/8 by 3 7/8, and then I will need 4 rectangles that are the 3 7/8 by 1 7/8. So what I'm doing here is, this is my 2-inch mark. Right between the 2-inch and the 1 3/4 is the 7/8 mark. So I've got my 4 pieces that are 3 7/8 by 1 7/8. And I always, when I'm done cutting a batch that are supposed to be the same size, I always do this to make sure that I did it correctly, because there's the odd time where I have made a mistake. It happens. Now let's see, is this wide enough? Yes. So my next ones that I'm going to cut are going to be 1 7/8 by 7/8. So this is 12 inches long. I'm just going to go down 7/8, and I need 6 of these. And then I tend to go down an inch and then up 1/8 of an inch, and then down an inch, up 1/8 of an inch, and so forth. So this one, where was that one? This one here was at 9 3/8. So I'm going to go down an inch and then up. And I tend to cut extras just so that I have them and I don't have to go back and cut. And for this piece, for these navies, they're extra pieces that I have from a card that I made. I keep having a hard time measuring and talking. They're extras from a card that I made a long time ago. So I'm just doing my best to use up some of the extras. And this is a great card for that, because so many of us have extras that are these sizes. It's just the bigger sizes that are a little bit, that you may or may not have extras to. So I need 6 of these. 1 2 3 4 5 6. I've got 6, and they are all the same size, so we're good there. And now I'm going to take one of these and I'm going to cut it so it's 7/8 wide, and I need to make 12 squares that are 7/8 by 7/8. So hold it down so that my paper doesn't shift, and then again I'm going to do it this way. So down 7/8, and this one I'm just going to do the entire strip. And I've done these cards a few times, so I'm getting a little bit more used to the measurements. I'm not used to talking while I'm cutting. But you'll have these all written down on your supply sheet, so you don't have to remember what these measurements are or how many of each you'll need, you'll have it written down, so it'll be an easy reference. And like I said, I need 12 of these, and I think if I remember correctly, I end up with 13 from the strip. And again, I stack them all up, make sure they're all the same size, and I've gotten a couple that are too big, and I seem to do that with these 7/8 ones. So I'm going to take those two and I'm going to cut them down. So when you start with this card, if you have like for this one in particular, if you have a sheet for the background, a sheet for the first layer, and a sheet for the inside layers, you should be able to get 2 cards. All right, so I've got them all the same size here. So that is my first layer of all navy ones. I'm just gonna cut this one the same as all of these ones, just because once you've cut them, you know what to do. So next I'm gonna cut my print. So the first thing, these ones are going to be in measurements of 3/4. So the first one is that big square. So it is going to be 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. So I'm going to cut a strip that's 3 3/4. And then I'm going to cut one of the squares, that's that center part. And then I'm going to cut 4 rectangles that are 1 3/4. Those 4 rectangles here, I'm going to put them on top of each other, make sure they're all the same size, and they are, so we're good there. Next one I need is 6 pieces that are 3/4 by 1 3/4. So for this particular one, I'm going to cut it 3/4 inch wide all the way down. Going to go down 1 3/4, and typically I'll go down 2 inches and then slide it up 1/4, and then go down 2 inches and up 1/4. This may not be easiest for some people, but I find that that's how I work well. So 1 inch, 2 inches, up 1/4. And then you'll end up with a piece that's a little bit too big, but we've got all of our pieces here, and we end up with 6 of them, so it just works out perfectly. This piece can go off to the side. And then the last thing we need to cut is those small squares, and they are going to be 3/4 by 3/4. Now I'm doing this on a guillotine trimmer. You can do it on one that has the slide blade as well. When we go to the point where we're going to score our card base, we're going to need one of those trimmers with the slide rule. In order to create this base, you can't do it with a guillotine trimmer. So that is 3/4. And again, once we're done this, we're going to end up with extras, but that's fine. I'd always rather have extra pieces than not enough. And take your time with this. I wouldn't rush it. There's no need to rush it. But you do want to be, and that's with the not rushing it, you do want to be as precise as possible with this, because when you've got your card together, and I'll show you in a minute, if you've got your cuts crooked, you're going to notice it. It's just going to, it's going to stand out. Like for instance, if these were all crooked, when I go to close them, you can see some parts where I've glued them down and they're a little bit crooked. The more precise you are, the better it is for having everything lined up and looking pristine. So I've got all of my squares here. I'm going to stack them all up and make sure that they are the same size, and so far we're good. Just a nice easy hack to make sure that we've got the right size when we are gluing them together. So I'm going to stick those all aside, next video we are going to do the scoring and the cutting for the base of this particular card. I'll see you in the next video.